the 5th and the 1st in Adrienette Miraculous Ladybug Fanfiction, Part 1. That was a very good match, Adrien. Thanks. Kagami watched as he sat down on the bench, sighing. She tilted her head in confusion when looking at him. Adrien, is there something bothering you? She asked. He gave her a wary smile but shook his head. Not anything new or in particular, he admitted. Kagami's mouth pressed into a tight line. From the fact that they grew up in similar families, that sentence could mean a myriad of things. It hadn't passed her mind that their childhoods were less than perfect. It was actually anything but. Is it something old, then? She asked while debating sitting down next to him. His father and her mother were almost one and the same. High expectation and little to no reward. There was no warmth. It was a miracle that Adrien had turned out to be so kind. Then again, his mother, the actress, had a golden reputation. No, Adrien shrugged and sighed. Actually, I don't even know what's wrong right now, he admitted. Kagami nodded stoically. If you do realize it, you may talk about it to me. It is good to say things out loud, she told him. He smiled at her gratefully. Now, Kagami was nicknamed the Ice Princess in nearly every magazine that featured her. She didn't disapprove of the nickname, nor did her family. She truly was hard as stone and icy as ever. It was important for a girl like her to grow up as an untouchable woman. However, a single smile from Adrien made her melt. It was like all of the emotions that had been borderline suppressed in her came flooding out. Her mother would probably have a fit if she could see her daughter now. Too much vulnerability, too much out there. She needed to be a statue, one no one could touch. Didn't they always say love makes fools of us all? And a fool she knew she was when Marinette Dupan Chang came barreling out of the school, clothes and bags dropping from her hands. The girl sighed indigently, and like a reflex, Adrien's slouched sitting position changed, and he bolted upright. His eyes looked to be on high alert, and he rushed over to Marinette, picking up the fallen garments as she blushed madly. Marinette seemed to thank him with a wide smile, one that had Kagami reaching a hand up and touching her own cheek. She could never make a smile so wide and grand and bright. With a defeated sigh, Kagami stepped towards the pair. Adrien's energy level seemed to have gone up in a way that it had never once done before around just her. Not that Kagami hadn't seen this phenomenon happen before. Whenever did Adrien's mood not lift when Marinette was around? Oh, I'm helping with the play crew and stuff, and yeah, the costumes are just a bit big for most everyone, Marinette said. Kagami didn't say a word, though Adrien did. That's a lot of clothes, he said, worry etched into his face. Your entire weekend is going to be working on them. His mouth turned into an uncharacteristic frown. Marinette shrugged and flashed a smile that looked to be full of anxiousness. It should be okay. I sew pretty quickly, she said. At that, Adrien's eyebrows turned in and his face became determined. Oh, he was about to do something impulsive, wasn't he? I can help you. I know basic sewing from my father, and I'd hate for you to be overworked for the weekend, especially with that big test coming up. At that, he snatched nearly half of the clothes from the top of the pile in Marinette's arms. She gaped at him with wide eyes, as if she was actually shocked that he was willing to do this for her. No, you really really don't have to, Marinette said, a blush growing high in her cheeks. Adrien shook his head and smiled at her. You know, the one that made Kagami grit her teeth together, because why didn't he ever smile at her like that? I want to help you, Adrien said, a soft look in his eyes. He was determined, all right. Even Marinette knew that. She bit her lip and gave up the fight, recollecting the articles of clothing in her arms. Thank you, she said, nervously but with a smile. It wasn't like Kagami hated Marinette. No, she couldn't. She had tried, that was true, but it was impossible. Impossible to hate the girl with such a bright smile and ever-helping heart. It was a miracle that Chloe could, because Kagami couldn't. Kagami understood why she held Adrien's affection. Perhaps in another life where she was shallow and vapid, she would have cooed over the two and admired their naive love. But that wasn't the life that she lived. It was disheartening to see Adrien insistently pining after her when all Kagami really wanted was for him to smile at her in that soft, loving way just once. But alas, that kind of hope, they're for dreamers, and dreamers were fools. And she was already a fool in one way. She wasn't going to be a fool in another. You know your father is going to be angry with you, Kagami said in an even voice when Marinette had scurried away, but not without promises of baked goods to Adrien. That was quite normal, actually. The latter whirled his head around and stared at her with surprise. We have a tournament next weekend, and I'm sure your piano recital isn't far behind. Not to mention, it is reckless to pick up more work. Your father will want you to focus on school, does he? Kagami continued. Adrien laughed and shook his head. I don't think he'll be too mad. He likes it when I do stuff with fashion, Adrien insisted. Kagami raised a brow at him. That wonderful boy she liked, but was dense as a brick. And naive. So naive. It is not wise to put extra work on yourself just to win someone's affection, Kagami said in a pointed tone. She would be lying if she hadn't thought of doing a similar action, something to put her in Adrien's good graces. However, she restrained herself. The blonde in front of her stared at her with confusion etched into his eyes. What? He said, stepping back. Marinette's my friend. I want to help her, he said, his defense falling flat. Kagami clicked her tongue, pulling down the mask to cover her face once more. You are so stuck on the same target. You can aim somewhere else, Kagami said, walking back to the other duos practicing. Looking back, Adrien had the most puzzled expression on his face. I have no idea what you're talking about, he said seriously. Kagami rolled her eyes, though he didn't see it as her eyes were covered by the red mass. He was a sweet fool, truly. Adrien didn't even realize he loved Marinette in such a strong way. And even I can tell, Kagami muttered to herself.